Good morning and welcome to Radio Tiny House. I am Barry Smith.
Here I am, Beth Smith, today.
Here she is.
Here I am.
She's always right there. She's my right-hand person, that's for sure. I don't know what I'd do without her. Anyway, welcome to Radio Tiny House. This is episode 8. Today is Tuesday, November 10th, 2020. The year's almost over.
Yeah.
So we had some exciting news this morning. Radio Tiny House podcast is ranked as number 4 in the list of top 5 tiny house podcasts to follow in 2020.
That's really cool.
I think that's really cool. That's we've been doing this for what?
Well, we're on episode 8.
We're on episode 8. Yeah, so we're
8
trying.
weeks?
We're trying to do one of these. Probably 10 weeks. We're trying to do one of these a week, but we skipped a week or two for various reasons. One of which was vacation. We could have done one. We took all of our equipment to do one from our little Airbnb beach tiny house.
And then we said, forget it.
And we just said, nah, we're not going to do it.
We're taking a vacation.
It's too important to get away. And
Yeah,
if you have the opportunity to get away, then get away.
We had to.
You need to go to Tybee. If you're on the East Coast and you want to go to a fun, relaxing beach, Tybee is the place to go.
It's just outside of Savannah.
It is. Great place. But again, we're not sponsored by Tybee Island or the Visitors Bureau or the state of Georgia or anything.
But I'll write him a letter today.
Yeah, we'll write him a letter. That's right. So anyway, welcome. Got a busy day today. Some really interesting topics, I think, that we're going to be looking at. Number 1, we're going to talk about Beth's adventure that she just had with our daughter.
Okay.
We're going to be talking about why go tiny. We're going to be looking at some tiny home news, some stuff that's happening, and then Beth has a rather exciting announcement that we'll make in a little while.
Okay.
So tell us about your adventure. You went to...
Well, let's just say Quantico. That's the easiest way to put it. I actually was able to stay on the military base, and Barry, who loves all things like that, was kind of jealous. But it was just that we were just so busy. We drove our daughter that does not live on our property
Right.
with us. She's daughter 1 and does not live in tiny house 1.
No.
She lives in the city. She's a well-known florist in the Atlanta area. But occasionally she does destination weddings, and I help her when I can. And usually I help her when she does destination weddings because it's easier to travel with Mom, particularly during COVID stuff,
Right.
than it is to travel with other people. So we had a small wedding to do, and it was just south of D.C., I can't tell you what town it was, I'm sorry, but it was right on the Potomac River. It was beautiful. And she always does an amazing job. So, but I'm her mother. I'm really proud. But she does. I mean, she has a great Instagram. I should tell people what that is.
You should tell them what it is.
It's Rhapsody in Blooms. That's plural blooms on Instagram, and she does do a Facebook too. But she does beautiful work, and I post from time to time, and people say, "Oh, Beth, that's beautiful," and I'm like, "Well, I just follow directions really well."
She works all over the place. I mean, she's done weddings in L.A. Of course, she lived in L.A. for a number of years.
And New York.
10 years. In New York and up in the Hamptons, and of course here in Atlanta.
Right. That's where she settled.
You said something that I thought was funny. Most people don't do a destination wedding
to
a Marine base.
Oh, well, that's true. Yeah. So we were actually on the Potomac, somewhere south of D.C., about 45 miles south of D.C., but Quantico came up as an Airbnb. And, of course, as we mentioned the last time, if we travel, we're only traveling in Airbnbs because they have listed their new cleaning policies on their schedule.
Right.
And, excuse me, we're trying to be COVID careful, I call it. So we interact as little as possible. We stay in Airbnbs. I do the whole nose rinse, Listerine rinse, to try to make sure those germs aren't growing in my nose and in my throat. But you know.
Now, just to be clear, you're not rinsing your nose with Listerine.
Not yet. That would be tricky.
That would be painful.
Yeah, no, I use the salt nasal rinse. But anyway, so we did all that and tried to travel carefully. We ate outside mostly, and ran into the bathroom for 5 seconds to go to the bathroom. But anyway, so we stayed in an Airbnb, and it happened to be on Quantico, the Quantico military base. And I was going to do my group every Sunday night. I go live on Facebook, and I was going to do my Facebook Live, but We tried to go back to the Airbnb for me to be able to do it, and the Marines wouldn't let us on the base. So there was a little snafu about getting back on, so we had to go somewhere else, and I didn't really have the opportunity to go live. So that was exciting. So then I had to change that to I'm actually doing my Facebook Live tonight. But because I think their threat level is raised, so they're not like letting people onto the base unless you have armed guards and things like that. It was really kind of exciting.
Well, or unless you have a trusted traveler
traveler, but we didn't have one. It was all very complicated. So while the Airbnb was lovely, if you want to get off and on and the base and be at that Airbnb, that's not the place for you to stay.
No.
If you want to visit somebody on the base, that is the place to stay, but not to go off and on. Because you never know if you're going to get let back on or not, because they're kind of inconsistent about their rules. I probably shouldn't say that because I don't want to get anybody in trouble. Anyway, so I stayed at Quantico, and Barry is very jealous.
30 Marines who were on duty that night who are going to be on doing KP duty for the next several weeks.
We did all the forms and filled everything out. We tried. Anyway, we did finally make it back to our Airbnb late, and so it's from Atlanta, or our area, it's about 9 hours up. So we did that on Saturday, worked all day Sunday, drove home all day Monday, and so it was an exciting adventure.
And the bride and groom got married.
They did, and it was lovely.
You could say that it went off without a hitch, but that's not true because they were hitched.
That's right. It was lovely. It was an outdoor wedding, and the weather was amazing, and the leaves along the Potomac are all changing colors, and there were even boats going up and down, but it just added to the ambiance. It was lovely. So I'm glad I did it, and I'm glad to be home.
Well, I mean, that sounds actually like a fun trip. I've been to Quantico before, and I've been...
they have a golf course.
It's a beautiful place.
I had no idea. I'm like, is this on the Marine base? It was pretty cool.
It's a cool place.
It is.
But I never really thought of it might having an Airbnb.
Neither did I.
Of course, it is kind of weird because Quantico, the town is right in the middle of the base.
Right.
So
we did a little bit more investigation, and we're going way in a rabbit hole here, but it's the only military base that has a town in the U.S. that has a town in it.
In the middle of it, yeah.
Right. So, that's why some of the rules are a little tricky to get off and on. But anyway.
Yeah, it sounds a little like Eureka, the TV show.
Yeah. It is a little bit, I assume, like that. Although I don't think there's any weird science experiments going on, but who knows?
You never know. You never know. We never know what's going on.
We don't.
So anyway, that was her big adventure for this week. We had an adventure last week, and she's had one this week. What's going to happen next week, I wonder?
I don't know.
Who knows?
Maybe
may snow.
It'll be Goat Palooza, because we are having Goat Palooza at our house.
Goat Palooza.
Right now.
We have our daughter collects dogs that aren't hers, and so we jokingly call those dogs not my dog. Hashtag not my dog. And now we have hashtag not my goats that kind of wander on our property. And when they eat the grass, it's okay, but when they eat the bushes and things like that, that's it's just not appropriate. But you can't tell a goat that. My
blueberry bushes, I think, are toast. My fig tree is gone. My butterfly bush will no longer
attract butterflies.
Our roses are now, they have like 3 blooms left on them, but we're getting there. We're trying to get our neighbor to corral the suckers.
Well, they're escape artists, and unless you do build Fort Knox, goats will find a way out, just like rabbits do. Rabbits are, man,
they are
we've
diggers.
Got rabbits, and they are diggers. So, anyway, that's a little off topic of tiny house living, but not really, because, I mean, a lot of people want to move to a rural area, live in a tiny house, and have animals. So,
we got them.
Just go into it knowing that goats are a blast. I got to tell you, I love the goats. They all have their own personality. They can be jerks. One in particular can be a jerk, but the other 2 are just really, really sweet.
They're like dogs with horns.
Yeah, exactly. And they will follow you around
or try to get in the house.
Yep. So it's they're fun. The rabbits are just
wiggle their noses.
And they're soft, and they make more rabbits, more bunnies, and they dig. everywhere.
And they escape. And we think the dogs are going to eat them and all that stuff.
You couldn't have horses and rabbits on the same property because your horses would be falling into rabbit holes all the time.
True.
So that's sad.
I
mean, that is sad. So anyway, the other thing, one of the other topics we wanted to look at today was kind of a brief history, because I find this interesting.
So Barry's a history freak. So the history part is exciting.
I call it buff, not freak.
I would say freak. But okay.
I'm a history freak. There are several things that I'm a tech nerd. I'm a history freak. And
I'm a tiny house nerd.
And I'm a weather nerd.
Yeah.
Or a weather geek. I don't know.
Nerd is the cool term, I think, now.
Nerd is the cool term, yes.
So we, of course, we want to be cool. So let's use the right
Beth's
term.
dad was a meteorologist.
Yes.
And so I learned a little bit of that from him. And then I have a good friend that's the chief meteorologist at Channel 2 in Charleston, South Carolina, Rob Fowler. If anybody watches Rob, give him a shout out. But I love the weather. It's just kind of cool to, I mean, we all have weather. So.
That was profound.
That was profound. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
I've only had one cup of coffee today, so my profundity is on the lower level today.
Profundity?
Yeah, that's it.
Whoa.
So, brief history, tiny houses. When we started looking at tiny houses, we've talked about our history with tiny houses. I never really associated tiny houses with historical people, like Native Americans lived in tiny houses.
Right.
Vikings lived in tiny houses and then had a community longhouse, which is kind of cool.
Right.
Love to have a longhouse here where we could have family and friends gather and
sure, let's build that.
Sing songs to Viking gods or whatever. Sing the theme song to Thor, the god of thunder. But it's there's a long history of tiny houses. As a matter of fact, until about the maybe middle to late 1800s, most people didn't live in large houses. Everybody lived in what we would consider to be a tiny house. If you look at prairie homes, they were all tiny houses. They were made out of whatever they could find to do. We visited a couple of sod houses a couple of years ago out west, and it's amazing that they're still standing. And it's fascinating how they built these buildings just basically to survive on the prairie, and then wound up farming that land or trying to farm it, having families there, and everybody living in one 10 room
by 15 building.
Yeah,
or something. So.
But it goes way far back. It goes several thousand years back. Probably the first houses ever built by man were small, tiny shelters that their whole family could get into, or possibly even many members in their community. So tiny homes are kind of old, but it's only recently that they've gotten kind of cool. So anyway, that's my little history thing on tiny houses. Tuff Sheds are rather we're not sponsored by Tuff Shed. Shed houses are a relatively new thing, but tiny houses are not.
Well, and the movement in the United States started about 20 years ago. Maybe that's too far, but Jay Schaefer is the one who kind of started the tiny house movement that people started catching on, and he started living in it's like the tiniest of tiny houses. It was about 100 square feet. Now, I'm a little claustrophobic, and there is no way I could do that. But and our house isn't technically a tiny house. We've talked about that. I call it that. Anything now, and in fact, I have a Better Homes and Gardens magazine that was ridiculously expensive, but for a magazine. But it says tiny house, and then it says something under 1,000 square feet.
Right.
So that tiny house nomenclature is moving up to like 1,000 square feet. When you know that houses are 2,500 square feet, the average house is 2,500 square feet, and a lot of people have even bigger than that, then you don't, anything under 1,000 seems small. That's how we reference it. Right. Anyway. But it is easier, by the way, to build something a little bigger than super tiny because of zoning and permitting.
Right.
Anything under 400 square feet or 350, somewhere around that range, you're having to use extra building codes that have been added to the International Building Code.
Right.
And not all states have adopted those. So if you can go 400 or 500 square feet or bigger and still stay small, I mean, there's nobody that's going to give you a medal or a ribbon for living in a certain size house.
Right.
Right? And I discourage people from living in tiny houses on wheels for a whole cadre of things. I think they're challenging, and we'll talk about that more. I know that's not the cachet right now because people are living in them, but I think there's some real challenges with that. So we opted for a shed, a tiny house shed, because that gave us two things. It gave us a small living footprint, and it gave us affordability, and it gave us quick. It took 6 days to build the thing.
Right.
So that was a quick hit that we wanted to do to move our building process along. So that's why we decided to go shed. There are a lot of people that are using what we are used for our podcast studio. We talked about it before a little bit, but a drag and drop shed, right?
Right.
Where somebody just brings something and puts it on your property. I think there are some challenges with that. I don't think it's the worst thing you can do, but I think you have to be aware of some challenges around that. But
and whatever codes, you have to be aware that are different for.
Yeah, because people that are in your county probably don't want you living in a house without a foundation.
Right.
And houses don't last very long without foundation. So there are some real challenges with that. But if you think of it as a disposable house, like, hey, it cost me $30,000 to live in this, and otherwise I wouldn't be able to do it, then it's a place to start.
Right. Yep.
So, anyway, I kind of got off on a tangent. Why go tiny or shed? We have on the list, and I got off a little bit. It is more affordable.
Well, we're more free form. I just put
I know he
those up
tries to rein me in.
Honey, I gave that up a long time
exactly,
ago.
as you should. Why go tiny? It is potentially more affordable, but what you have to know is that it can be more expensive per square foot. Because
right.
You still have to have infrastructure. You still have to have a bathroom and sewer and water and power.
And floors.
And a roof.
And heat.
Right. And so the bedrooms are cheap square footage.
Right.
The expensive square footage is the infrastructure.
Right.
Right. So it might be higher per square foot. Now, I've seen tiny homes on wheels for $335 a square foot. And that's kind of insane.
Yes.
And then you don't have a place to put it. And so that's one of my... Again, I don't want to get in that rabbit hole today, but that's one of my things. It's like, wow, you're spending all this money for this tiny home. Let's call it $150,000 for a tiny home. And then you have no place to put it, so you have to rent your land.
Right.
That's, to me, not a very practical way to go about it. And if anything, I'm like Miss Practical. At lower energy usage and costs, we should talk about what
Big
our
time.
power bill is.
Our power bill...
now, we live in the South, so we have to have air conditioning and heat all the time.
And either one of them is usually running all the time. We do have all LED lights in our house. We have an electric hot water heater, but we do have a gas stove and oven, so we don't have to worry about
and we do
power
have a
for that.
Backup vent-free gas fireplace that we use very rarely.
So our electrical bill every month is...
and we're in 768 square feet.
Right. Ranges from the lowest is $65. The highest it's ever been has been $120 when it was like 100 degrees outside. And the air conditioning, everything was just running constantly. So it averages to be about maybe? $75 a month, which is awesome when you're...
we do use mini splits.
Yes, we do use mini splits. So usually, and we're super insulated.
Yes.
So talk about that for a second.
Oh, okay. So we our code, because we're in the foothills of the Appalachian Mountains, our county has upped the code for insulation, and our house is built to code. So our roof is R38. We upgraded our walls to 2x6 studs.
Right.
That's R19. And then I actually made a mistake and put higher insulation on the underneath than I was supposed to. But we also put R38 under the floor. I think it was supposed to be R30 or something. But oh well. So we have extra insulation under the floor. So our house stays pretty toasty, and it doesn't change temperature. It doesn't fluctuate. Our heating envelope doesn't fluctuate that much.
Right. Yes. It's usually pretty steady, even when it's really, really cold outside or really hot. it tends to stay, in a relatively comfortable range. We do have some solar gain coming in from the front windows, so if the door's open, if the window's open, all that kind of stuff, it can get hot.
But we did that on purpose so we could warm it in the winter with the sunlight. Now, we have both. We have a built on-site shed and we have a drag and drop shed that is this building. And this building does not have any of that.
No.
It has R13 in the walls. And it has, right now, we just have...
Astrofoil up on the ceiling.
Yeah, but it's also called Reflectic or something like that. We have that on the ceiling.
Well, that's an R11 value.
Yeah, it's about an R11 up in the ceiling. And we have a metal roof, so that's pretty comfortable in the summertime.
Yeah.
With winter, not so much. But the floor is not insulated because it's just surely was made as a storage, work, office type shed. Someday we may get that taken care of. But this is way less stable temperature-wise. It swings, but we don't use it. We use it a few hours a day.
Right.
Or if it's too cold, we don't come up here. So we're not really worried about that, although we're converting it into doing some more video and stuff like that. So we might have to change what we're doing. We did just add fiberglass insulation on the walls.
Right, but we can add, we've got a carpet in the main part.
I'm getting one of those Rug Buddy floor warmers, and so I can't wait. I'm going to do an unboxing video because
Didn't you put it on airplane mode? We're still on here though. So.
We're still on here.
On the podcast, fine. We're still recording. So so that was Beth's.
Well, this is live stuff. If your phone rings and you're making noises, you have to turn it off.
This is live stuff, and that's one of the things that I wanted to make sure we did with the podcast was. We don't edit this.
No.
It is, if you sneeze, you sneeze. If you cough, you cough.
And I was having a sneezing event this morning.
Oh, my gosh. She sneezed about 20 times in a row. So I'm not sure what that was about.
Gotta get that out of my system. So my phone rang. Sorry. Anyway, so the nice thing about that distance between the two, like we have one that's built to code, super insulated, it stays very stable. We have another one that is not. And I think people that do it this way would feel...
Are you talking about the
shed is not as insulated and it's not as stable. And if you were trying to live in one of these sheds without the insulation in the floor and the way we've insulated the ceiling, you would have a lot more energy costs and you would have a lot more temperature swings.
Right.
Luckily, we don't have to do that.
No, we don't. And we cool, when we need to cool down the shed... or heat it up, we just turn on we have a little fireplace space heater.
Right.
And we have a window air conditioner for when it's hot. And honestly, I've spent a lot of time up here this summer doing recording and doing some schoolwork and things like that and writing. I turn it on and in 15 minutes, it's not hot and muggy anymore.
Well, we're also heating and cooling about 300 square feet.
Right.
But here's the thing. When we stayed in our little Airbnb, and this is a plug for mini split systems, and if you don't know what those are, look them up. They've had them in Europe for years, and finally in the United States we're getting them. But when we stayed in our little Airbnbs, we had forgotten first off, how loud they are. Oh my gosh, they are so loud, and they are also really cold, right? So it's hard to get a comfortable temperature because you're either burning up or freezing, and they're very loud. There's no way we could record with the air conditioner on or even one of those little space heaters on. So when we're doing this stuff, having something that's more ambient, like a mini split, would be a better use. And I try to tell everybody, if you can afford it, Mr. Cool is a DIY mini split. I think it's about $700. Yes, it's more than $150 window air conditioner unit.
Right.
But you don't have to have heat. Another unit for heat. You don't have to have this loud, noisy window air conditioning. If you can do it, I would go mini splits all the way.
And
that's not an ad for them. It's just my experience.
Now the one they had two window air conditioners in this place we stayed at the beach.
Oh my goodness, yes.
One in the bedroom, which was relatively quiet, but was either freezing or if you turned it up a degree or two, it became very stuffy. And there was one in the bathroom that just sounded like a C-130 trying to take off. It was loud.
We never used it.
No, I turned it off. Well, during the day I used it twice because it was just kind of stuffy in the place. But at night, there's no way you could sleep with that thing on. But that's why they had earplugs that you could use.
I mean, it was an adorable tiny house.
It was great,
but I wouldn't.
And we're not saying anything bad about that, but the air, I'd put a mini split in there in a heartbeat.
Yeah, and it's way more energy efficient, as we talked about.
Right. So the final thing, why go tinier shed? Now, this is not final. I mean, this is 3 that were just topics that I think people would be most interested in, without getting down the rabbit hole too much. And by the way, there's a reason they call rabbit holes rabbit holes.
Yeah, we know more about that now.
Is less clutter, potentially.
Potentially.
A lot of people live in big spaces and they move to tiny houses and they take all their stuff with them. And then they go, oh my gosh, where am I going to put all this? And then they get another building to put all that stuff in. So they've not really decluttered their lives at all. And, from a psychological standpoint, clutter is not good for your mind.
No. The problem is that, we have stuff in this shed. We use this as overflow of tools and things like that because our tool shed got taken over by the goats, and that's a whole other story. But, and we're redoing some of that stuff.
It was a goat siege.
It was. The goats were here and they had to have a barn. Anyway, but I'm converting this space in the front of this unit into like a guest room, and we have the opportunity to do that. We bought this because we had to have a place to do. I was working corporate from home, and we were trying to live in a camper and build houses, and we got this rent-to-own shed, which was a terrible financial decision, if you will. But because it was rent to own, it was better for our taxes. It's a long story. But anyway, but we kept it. Yes, we paid more money for it that way,
right.
But we kept it, and because we were using it exclusively for an office. But so now we have it, and it is easier for clutter to we've got our Christmas stuff here, and we store some extra food here,
right.
And yada yada. But it's so easy to get clutter out of control, particularly when you're living tiny, because there's a certain level of things that you have to have, right? So I tell people, look, they're like, how in the world am I going to be able to go tiny? Get rid of everything you think you can get rid of, get into your tiny, and then get rid of it again, because you cannot. It's really hard to get your head around it.
Right.
How much you have. People, and then I work as a professional organizer. I'm not currently doing that because of COVID, but everybody, I mainly help people move now, and downsize. And when we start pulling stuff out of closets, they're like, I had no idea how much stuff I had.
Well, that's the main thing. I mean, when we've moved, we've lived all over the country, and every time we move, I say the same thing. How in the world did we accumulate so much crap?
Yeah, it's called Amazon. That's one thing. It's called entertaining yourself by shopping.
But before Amazon, we would buy, a lot of it was kids stuff.
Yeah.
So you'd buy toys for your kids, and you go, well, they don't play with this now, but they might want it in a
I
year.
spent all this money, so I need to keep it.
Right.
This
was an expensive crib, so it needs to stay in the attic.
Exactly.
Well, no, it doesn't really.
Right.
Because when your kids grow up, chances are they're not going to want that anyway. They're going to want something different from either IKEA, because it's cheap
and cool
and modern, or they're going to want whatever the top bed is at the time for their baby. They don't want the crib that they stayed in.
Well, and so many people do that too. That people that are our age that have grown children, they want to save stuff for their children. And I have to tell them over and over again, your kids don't want it.
Right.
And that's kind of hard. But anyway, that's a whole nother thing. By the way, just now this seems to make some sense to talk about it. I have 2 upcoming workshops. One we'll talk about here at the end, but the one I want to talk about right now is for December. Excuse me, frog in my throat. For December, I'm doing a 12 Days of Christmas magical decluttering workshop.
So it's
mainly for moms.
Harry Potter decluttering?
Yes. It's going to be mainly for moms and kids, who have houses with kids. And we're going to have people be able to declutter their space to get ready for Christmas. We've been living on top of things with COVID. Spaces are getting cluttery. Grandparents are going to be sending Amazon packages. There's no place to put them. So we're going to have a 12 Days of Christmas decluttering workshop. So we'll let you know how to get in touch with that. It's going to be listed on my Tuff Shed Home and Radio Tiny House. Both are Facebook pages, and both are Well, Radio Tiny House is a website.
Yeah, right.
So if you are interested in the 12 Days of Christmas, it starts December 1 and it ends December 12. We've got lots of fun things that we're going to be doing together. So we're going to be doing a 12 Days of Christmas decluttering challenge together.
Cool.
To get rid of stuff, to get ready to get some more stuff.
Does that include maybe like Christmas ornaments that your grandparents had?
Yeah, there's lots of things. Barry's a voice actor. So one of the fun things that we're going to do that I've volunteered him to do.
Yes, she did. She volunteered.
If you complete
in the spirit of Christmas,
right.
she volunteered
if you complete the challenge, he's going to be a Santa and call the kids and do a Santa call to all the kids about, we'll figure out exactly what that's going to be.
We haven't figured out exactly what kind of Santa I'm going to be. If I'm going to be
You're going to be an appropriate one.
Appropriate, benevolent Santa, or if I'm going to be the grumpy old whiskey drinking, cigar smoking Santa.
Coal delivering Santa. No, so we're going to reward the folks who finish the challenge with a hot cocoa end of the challenge with hot cocoa, and then everybody gets a call. Who wants the one can get a call from Santa. So that's going to be fun. We've got a lot of other fun things planned, trying to make decluttering a lot more fun.
But I do have a history of being Santa. So
you do, and not only was Barry doing Kid Santa, he's done several adult Santa experiences.
Yes.
And I am shocked to hear his reports about his feedback about his experiences of being a Santa.
Yes, it's amazing what happens at country clubs
when you're the Santa.
When you're Santa and people are drunk.
All right. But that's not appropriate for this show.
No, it's not. This is a family show.
It is a family show.
And we are not sponsored by Santa Claus or North Pole Industries.
All right. Although, yeah. That's another conversation for another day.
Yes, it is.
Anyway, all right. So
we actually should have our old radio show as a sponsor.
So
we'll work on that.
Maybe we should do for our Christmas show. So Barry and I, a long time ago, had these crazy friends, and we did a skit about, we called it Arctic Home Companion. It was tailored after Garrison Keillor's Prairie Home Companion.
Right.
And we did these crazy commercials and all that stuff. And I think we should I think I can find
We should dig that up and do some. That was
some
fun.
Of those. It was a lot of fun.
What we ought to do is get everybody online somehow.
Well, we do stay in touch with all these folks.
Do it all like we did it then. Yeah,
right. That would be fun. Let's see if I can dig it out.
That'd be a blast.
The Arctic Home Companion.
That was fun. And I think that's a great Christmas. That's a new Christmas tradition. Arctic Home Companion.
We have the Arctic Home Companion.
Yes.
I'll dig it out. That'd be fun.
All right. So moving on, just the last issue I've got. Beth may have something else she wants to talk about.
I have lots of issues.
We do have.
I can talk about them all day.
Topics. We're not talking about issues.
You said issues.
Yeah, I know what I said.
I have issues.
I'm not going to edit it out, but I'm talking about topics.
Yeah. Topics. Stay focused.
This is not therapy.
Let me tell you about my issues. You hear about them all the time, every day.
I do, but that's okay because I love you. Tiny Home News is. This is kind of the story is new. It was just published in Fast Company yesterday, which is a corporate kind of magazine, but the story is originally from May. The city of San Jose, California, is one of a couple of different cities that are now allowing tiny homes on wheels to be placed in people's backyards. And they had, like much of California, they had already been allowing ADUs, accessory dwelling units, in people's backyards. And back in May, they also approved having tiny houses on wheels, which is great for the people out in California or San Jose because real estate prices are insane. Ridiculous. Housing prices are ridiculous. So according to Fast Company, the average ADU in San Jose is $250,000. Now that's to be in somebody's backyard.
Oh darn! If I could use my phone, I'd tell you how much per square foot that is. I can't do that in my head.
No, you can't because it's up there.
It's up there, and I'm videotaping. But it's a lot per square foot.
It's a ton per square foot, and so they decided that was pretty costly, and that people needed to have a better option to be able to live and work there because it was people are still in California, they're working for tech companies, and they're living in motorhomes, or they're living in vans.
Or they're living in tents.
Or tents, because they can't afford a lot of homeless people are living in tents out there, but I guess workers could be as well.
And their cars, they are.
Yep, because housing...
They can't find a place to live.
Yeah, it's crazy. The housing is just incredible in California right now. Incredible in a bad way. Right. Well, a good way if you're a landlord, or if you're trying to sell your house.
The fires burned a whole bunch of housing too.
But the average tiny house on wheels, or what do they call it?
Yeah, I call it I don't say it. I just say THOW.
THOW. We have to explain to some people. Yes. The average cost of the tiny house on wheel, or THOW, or THOW, which sounds like you're trying to throw a baseball, but you left the R out. In the city, it's $50,000 for a tiny house on wheels. Now, that you also have to you've got to put it in somebody's backyard, and the average cost to rent the space to have it in somebody's backyard is $500 a month.
Right. So you're paying, and that's one of my things about tiny houses. Now, if you're in San Jose, that's a bargain.
That is a bargain.
Don't get me wrong. But many people don't. If you're paying for $250,000 or let's call it $125,000 for a tiny house on wheels, and they are as inexpensive as $20,000, but they get expensive fast. But let's say you're spending $125,000 for a tiny house on wheels and $500 a month to rent your space to put it on, right? And then you have to pay, depends on, sometimes that includes electrical or not, depends on your arrangements with your landlord, but you're still in the rent trap forever.
Right.
So, but in San Jose, that's okay if that's compared to other things that you would be saving money.
Right. For us, being on the some of the blessings of being in the Southeast is that our real estate prices here are lower than many other places in the country. So that even home prices are lower here for regular houses. Raw land prices are lower here.
They're still not cheap, but they're lower.
No, it's not cheap, but it's lower than in California. So for us, to be able to build two houses on our property, and have a nice shed office. It's really nice to be able to afford to do that in places where in California, I mean, even $250,000 a month for an ADU now, and of course those
$250,000.
I mean, a cost, yes, not a month. That would be a little high, but $250,000 for an ADU, which can be anywhere from
like a garage, apartment.
Yep, something small.
It's under 600 square feet, probably. I think that's probably their limit. Usually, that's about what it is.
So, but that's still a high price.
Yeah.
But you're living in California, where everything is high. So that's those were my topic/issues for the day. And now Beth has a workshop announcement.
I do. As I mentioned, I had the downsizing magic, but that's not the workshop. What I'm trying to do is help people realize how they can do what we've done. And so within my Facebook group, I've been doing a lot of interviews and, helping people try to figure it out. But here's the thing. There's so much information that it's really difficult to answer people's questions and problem solve things specifically in that setting. So I'm going to try to start adding workshops. I put together one, and it's a Black Friday workshop. We're doing it on Black Friday. It's going to be in a Facebook group, so you can if you miss it on Black Friday, you can click in and I'll get you the link, whatever. I haven't set that up yet, but I'll have that for next week.
Which is a good time to do it on Black Friday, because who's going to be shopping?
Well, you can't go anywhere.
Yeah.
Surely no, you're not going anywhere. So anyway, we're doing the Black Friday workshop. I'm calling it the Tiny Home, Sweet Home, Get Her Done Black Friday Workshop. So many people are dreaming about it. They don't know where to start. They have problems. They don't know how to solve their zoning and permitting problems. So in the workshop together, we're going to help you figure that out. You'll have access to me to ask questions. I can help you look up how to figure that out. And then we have all kinds of other fun things we're going to be doing. How to get land, links to things, everything I can find to get you that. It's like a $1,000 worth of workshop. It's $29 because I'm going to be doing it. It's the first one I've done. And I'm going to be using this as a beta workshop to make sure I'm covering all the topics that folks need. So the nice thing about it is that it will be an interactive workshop to be able to answer their questions one-on-one. I see so much bad advice in on Facebook groups where people are asking these questions. And some lady said, "What's the best insulation?" And people gave her all their opinions. And she didn't ask what was the cheapest. She just said, "What's the best?" Some guy gave her the idea to stick cardboard in her walls. And I said to him, "This is bad advice. That is not, you do not want the roaches that cardboard attracts. It's not very insulative. It's bad advice." So I'm such a house nerd that I know these things. Now, I don't know everybody's code for everywhere, but I can promise you cardboard in your walls is not the best insulation.
Right.
So I want people to have the right advice and know places to get it. So we're going to put that workshop together. The Tiny Home, Sweet Home, Get Her Done Black Friday workshop.
Well, I have,
I can't even remember the name of it, but that's what I'm calling it.
But that's what it is. It's a Tiny Home, Sweet Home, Get Her Done
Black Friday
workshop.
Yeah,
that's a mouthful.
It is. But it's fun.
Well, I have another way to insulate as well. You can take...
Well, if it's cardboard, I don't want to hear about it.
No, you take all your old computer paper and just, instead of shredding stuff, you just ball it up and throw it in a wall.
Well, if that's how you want to live.
Or what about old clothes?
Well, there is blue jean insulation.
Yes, but it's shredded.
Right. I mean, there are different kinds of insulation, but cardboard in your walls is not the best.
No.
So anyway, I'm trying to, I do try to catch things like that and help people because a lot of people don't want to take workshops. They aren't afraid to raise their hand. They're afraid of dumb questions. This is not about that. This is about ask your questions. Let me help you get to where you need to be. And, most people who are looking to move into a shed home or tiny home are doing it for financial reasons. So I'm throwing everything I can think of to throw that people might need in this, but I'm also trying to keep it super inexpensive so people can afford it. But I also, there's only so much free information I can get out because it takes me hours to do this. Hours to find all this stuff.
Yeah, and that's one of the biggest questions that we get asked is, where in the world do I get started? Second is cost, and we talked about that last week. But I've seen things like people will say, well, where can I, buy land that I can do this on? And some people will say, just go buy the land and build a house on it because it's better to ask for forgiveness than it is permission.
That is bad advice.
That's horrible advice because they can actually take, the counties can actually take your house.
Oh, yeah. They can condemn it and kick you out and fine you. So we're talking about all those things in the workshop. And we'll help folks find the land in the state that they want to be in.
Yep.
You're probably not going to be able to do what we've done in the city, but I'm going to work individually with anybody who wants me to get them started. I've got links to places you could find land and owner financing and all those things and all kinds of calculators and everything I can think of that you might need to build your own. And I'm focusing on shed homes.
Right.
Tiny house on wheels, you already know how I feel about it. You can still do it. But I still think there's some really, and I think maybe we should do a podcast on why I think tiny homes on wheels are not the answer. It is if you're a nurse, a travel nurse.
Right.
Right? And you want to have a decent place to go travel to, but unfortunately they're not very mobile really. They're tiny homes on wheels that don't move.
Right, just like most mobile homes
are
don't.
Mobile homes but don't move.
Yeah.
Exactly. So, anyway, I think enough time. We've been enough on this, right? Is it time to go?
Well, this is so far this is our longest podcast.
Oh.
But
sorry.
But that's
we try to keep it about 30 minutes.
Long-winded is okay. Every now and again, you just got to have a long podcast.
Well, okay.
I mean, I listen to some that are 15 minutes, and some of the ones that I listen to are an hour and a half.
My threshold is about 30 minutes, and if people say, hey, I'm doing a summit. Well, I only have 12 people to talk, and I'm like, I don't have 20. I'm looking for 20 for my summit. Excuse me. And I'm like, I can hardly stay awake in church. I'm not going to be able to listen to 20 speakers in your summit.
Right.
So simple is best.
So I think we're going to wrap it up then. Yep. Is that good? Okay, we're going to wrap up for today.